to another broadcast of Family Matters, being brought to you by Gentleman's Quest. And we're the Salmons.
Yes, we are.
Right now, you only have us. I'm O'Neill.
And I'm Georgia.
And of course, missing from this is our sons, Joshua and Timothy. But we're delighted that you're here. Listen, we want to get going right away. We have a subject that we kind of, really hits home for us. Because this week or just recently, we suffered a very significant loss in our lives. And in turn, we thought, while we're having this conversation with our children as to how to deal with it, we just thought, it may be great for other families to engage that level of conversation.
I agree.
Should they be in that place as well.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be talking about grief in the matter of how we deal with it as a family, some things that you and I need to be mindful of, and of course, perhaps even offer some tips on getting back to life as you once knew it, the bouncing back. So let's talk about it. Let's see what we can find or perhaps even offer to you that may be of value. So we're going to be talking about grief again. All right.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind just while we are experiencing it is timing. And I'm learning that there is no limit. Like, you take the time that's needed to process through what you're going through. And for each person in your family, that can be different. One person may adjust through stages of grief or a loss in their life differently from the next person in the home. And just being able to respect each other's timing, that whatever's needed to grieve and to heal and to move forward. You can definitely get through it, but know that timing is involved.
Yeah, that's important. There's also, I think we need to address the idea that, grief is suffered in so many ways.
It is.
Whether it's the loss of a loved one, more often that's the most significant.
Yeah.
But it can be to the loss of things, a lifestyle.
Yes.
It doesn't have to always be a person. And I think, it's important that we kind of make mention of that, because sometimes people go through the stages of grief just simply, again, because some other aspect of their life
changes.
They had to experience a change or a loss. So timing is vital. I just want to highlight some things that Kubler-Ross said concerning the stages of grief, because while we're not necessarily offering you therapy, personal therapy that is, I think it's important, needless to say, that we acknowledge that there are different stages.
There are.
The first being denial. Coming to terms with that this even happened, whatever it is. Second being anger. I can't tell you how often I've found people, especially in their lowest state, when in turn it's been impactful or detrimental, they get angry right behind it. Perhaps that loss was so significant at best. They're just simply trying to come to terms with it. The third being bargaining, the why me, why not me?
Why did this happen? Why am I involved? Who did this? All of those things can cause you to start bargaining with the process itself and why it even exists. Our mind is trying to process what just happened. Yeah. And so you do begin to bargain, because a lot of times, sometimes we're looking, if we be honest, to even find a way to blame someone. And sometimes there's no one to blame. It's just a part of life that relationships change, life changes. Even the season we're experiencing now, we didn't expect this, but it happened. And so, that's one of the stages.
It's amazing, because I don't think everyone applies grief or the consideration that some of our reactions today, our attitudes, could be a result of the loss of, some vitality, some access to a freedom that we once had, in turn. And so we get angry, we get, very beside ourselves, in other words. Here's the fourth, depression. And of course, that's some severe depth to that as well, as far as where one can go in the mind. And then, of course, from depression, more often you find people, if they're, through counsel, through help, they come to a place of acceptance or after some time has been, experienced in turn, they really come to regards to, well, now that I'm here,
that's right.
You know, what next? And then hopefully if they're on the right track and they're getting the help needed, they'll find themselves on the verge of experiencing some level of hope.
Absolutely.
There are some things that were mentioned already that I think my wife started out and she said time.
Yeah.
I think sensitivity, you know, to the fact that
we've learned that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Each person might deal with it differently.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think, you know, when I look at our sons and not just our sons, because while it may have been significant to them, the experience we had, we all shared a part in that.
We did.
And we all had to exhibit some level of sensitivity while we were at the same time sensitive in terms of how it was affecting us.
Yes.
So, you want to speak to that a bit?
Yeah, the sensitivity was a big part of our adjustment in just these last few days, because again, like my husband said, everyone deals with it differently. So one child may want to play music, and that's what's soothing to them or helping them out. So where in a normal day I may say, hey Josh, turn that down, it's too loud. I may have to pause a minute and say, you know what, let him play that because it's taking him through something.
Right.
One child may not want to eat, where I may be on a normal day harsh about getting that nutrition in, but if it means a pause for a moment because they just don't have an appetite, I've experienced that as well. The key, I think, is be sensitive, but we won't stay here forever.
It's going to affect every person differently. Some emotionally, some physically, some mentally, and even some spiritually.
Yes.
You know, so in turn, while we speak to the idea that it's going to affect individuals differently, I want you to regard that is not necessarily in the way it affects you. It may affect them. So keep that in mind as you meander through some of these things. And I love the fact that you mentioned that each person may be given to certain proclivities. Maybe they're listening to music. Maybe they're eating more than they did, or eating less than they did. I recall that our children, they took walks. They took more walks than they typically did, just to kind of air their minds out. Sometimes as a family, we had to take a breather and just kind of drive. You know, let the window down and just get out there. No one has to really speak to what's happening or address, the circumstance. Just be at peace with that, and if it comes up, it comes up. But let's not force the issue. Sometimes I think when we try to get people to talk and open up, it creates more friction. You
know what, babe? Thank you for saying that. This is another thing I learned, and this is for the parents. If your child is experiencing grief or some sort of loss, or even your spouse, one of the things I learned this week is be okay if you're not the person they want to talk to.
Oh, that's good.
Be okay with it. They may have a friend that just brings that soothing air in that moment. They, may have...
Or they can relate to.
Yeah, or they want to go on social media and share with their friends the experience in a loving, respectful way. We have to be okay with that because, again, everyone goes through their processes differently. And when we honor and respect each other, it really helps a lot.
So a point that we want to make, and we want to encourage you to recognize this, is that grief is an individual matter.
It is.
You never know how another person feels. So we try not to presume how they're feeling. And so if we're concerned for them, we engage them, inquire. Sometimes you can ascertain how someone's feeling just by interacting with them. You can sense it. You don't necessarily have to ask them that on, how you feeling today. Maybe they don't know how to articulate in words how they're feeling.
That's so true.
Sometimes through direct interaction, you glean more, more in turn just simply because of the interaction itself. Also want to put this out there as a point. A person's grief experience will directly be affected by the significance of that loss. In other words, the closer they perhaps were to the person or the thing could determine how they respond. I recall when I lost my grandmother many years back. This was a grandmother that I, spent many summers with. In fact, most of the summers that I recollect as a youth were spent with her, as well as several significant holidays like Christmas. And when she passed, it impacted me dearly. In fact, every now and then when I glance across a picture or have a picture of her in my mind or thoughts, I get very emotional. And so when we say that, I'll say this: you talk about time, and I've always been a believer in the fact that it's not time that heals all wounds, it's what you do with the time.
That's right.
You know, I choose
Absolutely.
to honor her with the time that I have. I choose to continue to live in. I choose to continue to move forward in life, because I realize in part that, you know, I can't change the past, but I can affect the future. And so in turn, you know, my choice is to keep on doing, and if it the best, you know, honors her, if should she be living, I love to think that what I'm doing today honors her.
That's
so
right.
Just want to speak to that as
good.
well. Now, we are hopefully providing you some tips along the way that, you know, can empower you and your family. If you do in fact have any that we've not mentioned, please go ahead and leave it in the chat. In fact, if you can just label one or two things that we perhaps said that impacted you thus far or will impact you in this broadcast,
Absolutely.
do us a favor, leave that comment. We'd love to know that we are
really
being
would.
of great value to you in this season. Now, we talked about some things that we need to be sensitive about. How about some things we need not do? Because quite naturally, there are a lot of things that we should avoid, especially in saying. Maybe I'll take the first one. How about this? Things that you, again, preventive, or you should rather, you know, avoid. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. That's the word. Time will heal all wounds. No, I already spoke to that. I just spoke to that, in fact, because many people, even adults today, I know in turn, because they haven't really properly grieved, properly mourned, they are in turn still stuck in that, you know, feeling of the moment that they once had, or back there when it happened. It's really what you do with time. Now, I must admonish you that if you find yourself unable to move forward, you may perhaps need counseling.
Absolutely.
You know, so seek
important.
that out. It doesn't take anything away from you to do so. In fact, adds to you.
Yeah.
How about another?
So one that I think you should avoid saying is "life goes on." That is such a sensitive area and a sensitive statement to make, because when someone experiences a loss, whether it be a parent, even a pet, sometimes situations like that, you feel in that moment like, how do I go on when the thing I lost was a part of my life? So we want to be careful with the words that we share, because while they're going through the grief, they may not be able to see the future. We know that that's true, and we're so excited that we are living. But again, just be sensitive to the space that they're in the moment. Be sensitive to what we say that may not match what they're feeling.
How about this one? No sense dwelling on the past. Well, anyone who has ever suffered a loss knows in turn that there's some things that you are given to reflect upon, both the good, bad, and the ugly. You know, the idea is to not live there, yes. And, you know, some of what we say, I think for the most part, it's with well-meaning. You know, it's not necessarily to be hurtful or harmful in turn, but unfortunately, you know, your intent may be muttered with, you know, your actions in turn that might not, you know, come across as sensitive to where the person may be. So, of course, it's their present experience, and if they've not healed and they're not whole, the past is all they know. And so, you know, the idea is to refresh them and to encourage them likewise.
That's right, absolutely.
We just maybe have two more to give you, and then we'll kind of move on.
So I have one to share. Try to avoid this statement: I know how you feel. Because a lot of times we don't know how they feel.
That's good.
We may not have experienced the same type of loss. And even when we do experience the same type of loss, we cannot dictate or predict what's going on in someone's heart and in their mind. So it is great to sympathize. It is great to have empathy when a person is experiencing grief. But that feeling sometimes is unexplainable. And the more we act like we know how someone feels, is the more we act like we can fix how they feel. And we know that we can't do that. We have to allow each person to take that journey and just support how they're feeling, support what might be going on the inside, and encourage them from that. But just again, we're sharing with you words to avoid, not that the words are not true all the time, but because they take you into a place that causes a little insensitivity, just be mindful of that.
Yeah. So here are 4 things that we want to suggest if you're engaging your family, your loved ones, perhaps even people that you work with in turn.
Yes.
I think these 4 simple processes or principles can be applied.
Absolutely.
The first being be real.
Yes.
You know, at the end of the day, people want to see and hear authenticity. You know, they want to hear sensitivity.
Absolutely.
If you don't know, and even let me just be frank with you, if you don't have the answer, don't suggest, you know, anything in turn.
Agree.
Just say in part, I don't know. I don't, you know, it's better to empathize, you know, and sympathize where you can, certainly. But if you can't relate, it's okay also to say, I can't relate to it.
Right.
You know, one of the things I think we got to be careful of saying, and we said it before, I think, I know how you feel. If you've not been down that road, then how do you really know in turn? And if our relationships are based upon how significant they are to us, or the impact could be based on how significant they are, so can our responses. So, you know, just being real. Again, hey, this is what happened. I am so sorry for your loss. You know, and that, I think that does a whole lot for the individual in knowing in turn you at least know and observe and acknowledge.
I agree. And another quick one I'd like to share is be quiet. Quiet is a good thing. Yeah. It's not that you're going to be quiet forever, but sometimes even in our silence, we can help our homes to find a place of peace. We can help the atmosphere to calm down, because grief can sometimes be very loud. Yeah. And so in the stillness and the quietness, and as parents, we can cause that to come into our homes. We can help it to come in. Now, quiet doesn't always mean there's absolutely no sound. Right. Sometimes it means bringing in soft music. Sometimes it means praying. Whatever you may do in your home that helps to bring that peace in place while everyone is processing through their situation.
Kind of goes to what we said earlier about, you know, allowing the person to have their mean or their way of expression. You know, sometimes when a person is grieving, we're quick to, especially if it's been prolonged, Danny, we're quick to rebuke, you know, then enable or engage them in the respect to, you know, process through that. It's okay to cry. I think it's important that we allow for, you know, the grief to be expressed, you know, of course in a healthy way, but for there to be an outlet to such. More often people get through it just by that expression being allowed in turn. Here's number 3, in fact, be supportive. Yes. I think it goes without saying that, you know, help, you know, in the time of need is valuable, an invaluable thing. And so be supportive as best as you can, whether that's sending a card or, you know, a hug or, you know, just encouraging words in turn, or sending a text. I think being supportive, you know, if it's a friend in turn, offer, you know, some help in part, whether it's cooking a meal or otherwise. I mean, certainly with our children in turn, we know, you know, they had to embrace it, and it was personal to them, but if it meant alleviating some of the tasks that they had to commit to and do, you know, it just allows for them to also have that room. The last one I think we can both speak to, and then just kind of close out there, being available.
Be available. Again, as parents, your presence matters. Even if a door is closed and you're on the other side of that door, your presence matters, whether it's through their text messaging. I know my kids are sometimes on social media assisting their friends as well, and just me liking a comment that they made that's helping them through the process, I'm being available. I'm being present in that moment to just remind them again, like we said, that we're supporting them. So be available. They may come to you any time of the day and it was out of the norm, but be available. That's all they need.
I think you said enough.
Yes.
You said it well. Praise God. All right. Listen, folks, we hope that you enjoyed this broadcast. It was very straightforward, simple, and to the point, but we intended it to be so. We've been talking about grief here and recovering, and hopefully if you apply any of these principles, it may prove valuable to you. I thank you so much for your time. Listen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. All right, we encourage you to do that. So go ahead right now. Make sure that you're a part of this broadcast. Family matters. Let us know how you were impacted by this. Perhaps you have your own personal testimony and experience by which you want to share. Go ahead and share that as well. the value of what we're doing is proven in that of your comments in part. So we thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Listen, until our next broadcast, don't forget to tune in to everything else It Matters has to offer you. God bless you. Take care.